Okay. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, and thank you for your patience. I know we've had quite a few snafus this morning, with me included. So anyway, this is the second part of our two-part, or actually our three-part trifecta on avian raw nutrition teas, and then we're gonna culminate this with our Fun with Food workshop. I have Jason Korean has given his time to us, which I am very, very grateful, Jason. He has developed this along with Dr. Karen Becker. I can't wait until you do write the book on the forever bird. I think you should do that.
Yeah, someday. We're talking about, some of us are talking about that now. Maybe we'll see.
That would be a wonderful project for you to work on. But anyways, let me give Jason a little intro. His resume is like reading a phone book. Okay, he's
That just means I'm too stupid to say no. That's all it
well,
means.
true, but he is a a plethora of information. I mean, he has a all species consulting. Um, is it a firm? Or but
Yeah,
he
I'm the lead consultant on the All Species Consulting Group, which does science education as well as this type of stuff,
this not
animal stuff. Yeah.
perfect, and he's on the by the faculty at St. Xavier's. That says doctorate degree in education and leadership. Has his master's in biology. Specializes in zoo and aquarium science. Your recent awards were a 2020 NSTA Distinguished Teaching Award. He's got the Golden Apple Award on YouTube. I'm award in genetics education. It's just amazing all the things that you do, and you still seem to be sane. So,
Yeah, this
but
close. Just this close.
this part, yeah, I'm like that too. But we are so grateful to have you here with us. If anybody wants to look at his complete bio, it is on his drkorean.com page, which has basically everything he does here, which is wonderful. So I'm not going to um, my your waste our time on me talking. I want to give it over to Dr. Korean, where we can learn about the uses of avian teas. Birds love it. You'll love it. Have tea with your bird when you're done here. Okay, here you go, Jason. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being part of this. Um, and it's so we've been I've been friends with Dr. Karen Becker, and for those of you that don't know, you really should follow her. She's the most followed vet in the world. She's over 2 million followers online because she really is challenging the status quo about how we keep our animals. um, Her and I, years ago, I remember in the 90s, thought that when pellets first emerged, that this was really gonna change things. It was gonna improve things, and it hasn't. We still have just as many health problems that occur with our animals because they're on processed food. So we want to support our animals as much as we can by getting them to thrive and not just survive in our homes. Surviving means they're just on the cusp of disease all the time. They're always it's kind of what has become the norm for a lot of us. But we want our birds to be extremely healthy so that we don't have to worry about this. And that comes through whole food nutrition, not through processed pellets, but through whole food nutrition. And someone recently um, told me, and I'm going to talk about how teas, play a role in that. But someone recently called me a radical because I was feeding no pellets. And I said, well, I didn't know it was radical to feed actual food to our animals, because that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'll show you some examples of that. If you were here last week, you know what I'm talking about. And so the journey into tea actually started over 20 years ago with the Arasaris that I was breeding. These are the smallest species of toucan. I still breed these. And this is cricket all the way to the right. And cricket was diagnosed with iron storage disease, or hemochromatosis. This is a very common disorder in species, all species of toucans, lories, lorikeets, starlings, mynas, among others. And then we started seeing it pop up here and there with different parrots and things like that. And so Cricket was diagnosed with this disorder, and Dr. Becker treated her. Normally, once they have it, that's it. Within a few months, they die. There is no real treatment for hemochromatosis because it's basically iron being stored in the liver and becoming toxic. So what we did was Dr. Becker drew blood from her for 3 weeks in a row, just did a quick blood draw, which forced the blood to make new blood cells, which pulled iron from the liver. And then we put her on a tea regimen, particularly decaffeinated black tea, which then staved off the disease for 3.5 years longer. So she was the ripe old age of almost 18, which is unheard of. Usually they're 12 to 15 is what they normally say for these birds. So she lived a long time, and tea was definitely the benefit. So when we started talking about tea, we started talking about the science behind tea and what's in these different plant components that can be beneficial. I then got Rio, who was my first black palm, and she had a heart murmur. And so we looked at the teas that could help her, and we put her on also a decaffeinated black tea regimen and got her heart murmur down to undetectable. And then I started working with zoo animals and introducing different types of teas to them. And we found that there was lots and lots of benefits to these different types of teas, including species like rhinoceros, who are also prone to hemochromatosis. And when we started looking into this, we realized European zoos have been using teas with animals for decades. They had all seen the benefit. But over here, it was very much, well, just feed them pellets. All the pellets will just take care of everything. And ultimately, I found that the pellets were really the problem. So we started developing teas because all of this is science. There is science behind everything. All of these things have been evaluated, and we have identified all of the bioactive components that are in all of these plant things that we can then brew and feed to our animals. This is not witchcraft, which is what a lot of people, I think, thought about this when they first hear about it. But this is science. There is science behind all of this. For example, star anise seeds, which are big favorites of birds. And for those of you that know, star anise smells like licorice, so it's probably a real attractant to birds. But star anise in the seed pod itself has shikimic acid. I'll talk about this later. And that is the active ingredient in Tamiflu. And so, like, these are common bioactive compounds that have been taken from the source and then marketed in pharmaceuticals. And so this is very much rooted in science, and I'll talk about some of those things as we go. But this is my morning. My morning is offering lots and lots of whole food. I have some parrots who get, like in the upper left corner, who get a lot of greens, microgreens, sprouts, a little bit of fruit. But then I have a lot of frugivores who get that those bowls like toucans, of the bowls at the top center. And then in my main aviary, I have 27 different species, and some of those are fruit doves, for example, who go through lots of fruit. All of this is missing from these bowls. The bowls are generally completely empty by the end of the day. So they're getting a lot of leafy greens, microgreens, mealworms, fruits, just a diverse whole food diet. And I have no one with any health problems. No one is plucking. No one is hormonal, because I'm offering them whole food that gives them what they need. So this presentation is based on our research and how we have actually used these and put it into practice, as well as the clients that I've had, including zoos, who are actively using these for a host of different species. And this is all based on Karen Becker's original presentation as well, and how she would recommend these things to her clients for their health. Now, birds do not drink from a Brita filter in the wild. This is what birds are drinking in the wild. They're drinking tea. They're drinking from rain catches up in the canopy. They're drinking from puddles and tannin-rich rivers in streams like the cockatoo here. And all of this is tea. Plant components are leaching compounds into the water, and all organisms are making use of this. And so this really got us thinking about, well, if they're drinking this stuff in the wild, what kind of benefit does it have? Are they drinking it because it has a benefit, or are they just drinking it because it's the only water source? And it's probably the latter. But there is a lot going on here. And even in this bottom right picture, you see the oil slick across the top, which means there's some kind of oil, some kind of fatty acids that are being released from plant components into this water, and animals are consuming this. And so we know that animals access their moisture from a lot of the foods they eat, and they eat a lot of things that we don't consider feeding them. And I just did a talk with Dr. Evie Voltura, who talked about all of the different things that they have found parrots eat, including mushrooms, including bark and wood, actually consuming them, not just chewing on them, but consuming them. Different types of leaves and seeds and nuts and things like that. So they're eating a host of different things. Larvae, insect larvae from tree bark, which the Indonesian Parrot Project has seen cockatoos like literally pulling these larvae out of the side of the trees and eating them. So our birds are eating lots of different things in the wild, and we want to try to offer them that diversity. And tea is one way to do that. We know that birds drink from puddles that are rich with tannins because of all the leaves that are leaching these compounds into the water. And Chicago Zoological Society did a study in the early 2000s that showed that they fed a high iron diet to starlings, and then they looked at the iron content of their liver, half of the birds of which were on a black tea regimen, and they found there was an 85% difference in iron content of the liver, so that the tannins in the tea did indeed have a major impact on blocking that excess iron from being stored in the liver. And this is a picture from Chicago where European starlings live with the wild monk parakeets, the wild Quaker parrots, and they are all playing in this puddle and probably drinking that tea. So we know in the wild that animals consume more than just the seeds and nuts and fruits that we offer them, but they also are drinking nutrients. So we may be missing an opportunity to get them interested in even more foraging through drinking. The research that I've cited in this is all from peer-reviewed research. It is mainly human journals, but many of them use animal subjects, which means in science, we extrapolate the findings that we see with one species and apply it to another. And so that's what we do. It's not just birds. There's all animals can benefit from some kind of tea regimen. This is the back end of a gibbon, an ape, and that's drinking from a rain catch where there's water, there's tea basically in that rain catch, and that's their main source because gibbons don't generally come down to the ground at all. They usually stay up in the canopy because they can't walk across large tracts of land. Their hind legs just don't support that. So types of tea. There's two major groups of tea, and this is where a lot of the misconceptions come from. Camellia leaves are from the tea plant, and that's what many of us think of as tea. So that's green, black, white, and you may have heard of oolong tea. But those are all from the same plant, and it's really based on how their leaves are processed, how they're dried, for example. The camellia plant is the plant that has caffeine. So these have to be organically decaffeinated, and I'll talk about that in a bit just so you know what that means. Every other tea, and there are thousands of other types of teas out there, those are all herbal and they're all naturally caffeine free. The plant doesn't have caffeine. So if you're drinking green, black, or white, those teas have to be decaffeinated for birds or any animal. But herbal teas are all fine. There's a lot of misconceptions. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows that if you get on Facebook, it's very easy for people to say they've had a bird for 3 seconds and all of a sudden they're an expert. So we will see people say, oh, even if they're decaffeinated, they're dangerous for animals and dangerous for birds. And I'm here to say that is absolutely false. Trace amounts of caffeine has no effect on any animal that we have found ever. We would have definitely, without question, seen that if that was the case, but it is not the case. So organically decaffeinated teas are totally fine. But like I said, herbal teas, someone just said, oh, I can't give my bird my chamomile because it has caffeine. There is no caffeine in chamomile tea. It's not part of the flower. It's not part of the plant. So there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I'm here to dispel those. So first, let's talk about the tea plant. It's a small evergreen shrub. The background of my presentation are actually dried leaves from the tea plant, camellia plant, primarily grown across Asia and then exported all over the world. The leaves are harvested at different times to produce different types of teas. And then they process them sometimes they fire them, sometimes they mix them with oils and things like that to get different tastes. These processes have been going on for thousands of years, like thousands of years. This has been a huge thing in Asia, where it started with a Chinese emperor who wanted to sterilize everything with boiling water, and it ended up turning into the tea habit. So, but fresh tea leaves are green, and then they will steam and dry them to make white tea when it's still a bud before it even unrolls. And then when the plant starts to dry, when the leaves start to dry, they pull the leaves, and if they can go through one process to produce green tea, another process to produce oolong tea, and then another process to produce black tea. So it's just how they dry these different leaves in order to produce the different types of tea that we offer and drink. So green tea, I think it's pretty much common knowledge now that green tea has lots of health benefits. And one of the reasons that green tea is so powerful is it contains polyphenols. Polyphenols are plant antioxidants. Antioxidants are basically these compounds that help clean up the mess in your cells so that your cells don't do bad things, like start allergic reactions or inflammation of any kind or cancers, things like that. So these polyphenols are really beneficial to keeping cells healthy, clean, and active. They scavenge those problem causers, which are called free radicals. And green tea has 20 to 30 times more vitamin E than vitamin E supplements do. So there's a lot of benefit to just drinking the tea itself. It has vitamin C, which helps strengthen the immune system. It lowers the bad and increases the good cholesterol. It also helps reduce blood pressure because it really has overall benefit effects to the circulatory, the cardiovascular system, including the heart. And it has nutrients because it's a leaf. So it has carotenes, and which are converted to vitamin A in the body. It has B vitamins as well, B1, 2, 6, and folic acid. And then it has minerals like manganese and potassium. There's other benefits that have been well researched. Green tea has been very well researched. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that green tea increases the expenditure of fat oxidation, which means it helps lose weight. It helps reduce fat storage, and it's more efficiently burned. The American Association for Cancer Research found green tea prevents gene damage. And if your DNA is damaged, that can lead to cancer and other disorders. And so we want to make sure that all of the pollutants that we come into contact with, excessive UV light. Some UV light is good and important. Like everyone has to have some exposure to UV light, birds and people, whoever it is. But excessive exposure can lead to gene damage as well. So green tea helps block that from occurring. It also contains epigallocatechin 3-gallate, which is EGCG. EGCG is a compound that basically interferes with tumor cells by blocking them from tapping into your blood supply. And if a tumor taps into the blood supply, called angiogenesis, it can then nourish itself and grow that much faster. And so EGCG helps slow that growth, slow that connection. A lot of clinical studies exist confirming green tea's role in reducing heart disease and stroke, because it basically helps keep blood vessels healthy and from hardening. And that's a major benefit, especially when we're seeing more and more African greys be diagnosed with atherosclerosis. And it also inhibits lipid peroxidation, which is really the issue with hardening of the arteries. So black tea has a lot of benefits as well. A lot of them are similar to green tea. The antioxidants in black tea help keep blood vessels supple. This is probably one of the reasons that people like the Japanese live so long and have such a reduced incidence of death from heart disease, because tea is part of their daily regimen often. So drinking tea, black tea, will help keep you alive longer. Dr. Becker tells a story often of a budgie that came in. The budgie was 16 years old, according to its leg band, and it was in this really nasty cage, and it was just eating nothing but seeds, mostly sunflower seeds. And she said, "Is this all this bird eats?" And the guy said yes. And it was this elderly gentleman who just didn't know any better. And she said, "Well, this bird is old, but it's thriving. Like, what's going on? What else does it get?" And he says, "Well, it drinks my tea and has some toast with me every morning." And so that addition of black tea seems to have kept this bird healthy. And if memory serves, she did take some blood to see what was going on, and the bird's blood work was great. So, who knew that there could be such benefit around just a simple addition like black tea, decaffeinated. The flavonoids, the compounds in black tea, also help reduce the incidence of atherosclerosis. Texas A&M has done studies on that. The tannins in tea chelate heavy metals, and so they bind to the heavy metals that would be in the diet, for example, iron, and carry them out of the body instead of letting them seed in the liver, which can cause problems later. Lemurs are also prone to hemochromatosis, so I developed a tea for lemurs. They're pollinators, so they like flowers, and so we combined flowers with the teas, and that became the free and clear tea that we now have on the market, which is beneficial for any bird, really, for detox, liver support. Additional research on black tea. So tea and coffee consumption and cardiovascular morbidity and mortality in the journal Arteriosclerosis, Thrombosis, and Vascular Biology. So they looked at over 37,000 people over the course of 13 years and found that there was less death and disease from cardiovascular issues for those that drank a lot of tea. So high tea consumption was associated with a reduced risk from cardiovascular disease. Other benefits. European Journal of Clinical Nutrition looked at black tea and found that there was lots of benefits and really no downside. Really no, there was no side effects. There was really no damage to any kind of animal physiology whatsoever. And there was sufficient evidence to say that it did indeed decrease heart disease. Now, like I said, caffeine, I know some of you have birds and you're like, the last thing my bird needs is a stimulant. So yes, we don't want to stimulate our birds any more than they're already stimulated. So we don't need to give them caffeine. green, black, oolong, and white teas have to be decaffeinated because they're all from this same plant, the camellia plant. So when you purchase teas, first and foremost, I recommend getting tea blends that are made for birds, because at least the birds were in mind when they were blending things. The reason I say this is because there are people who are just throwing pretty stuff into a bag and selling it for birds because it's pretty. But you have to formulate these things because too much of a good thing can be problematic. There are some components that we use in teas that are blood thinners. And so if someone's using too much of that, that can be a real problem. Some of these other things are also stimulants. And so they have benefits in small amounts, but they are hugely problematic in large amounts in the long term. So it's really important that if you're going to purchase tea for your birds, you want to make sure it's formulated for your birds and that they only use human grade ingredients. All the teas that I have formulated for the companies that I've worked with in the past have always been formulated for birds. The current blends that we have available at biobirdblends.com, all of those are specifically formulated for birds and other animals, so that you don't have any problems as a result of the formulation. Now, when you purchase teas, they have to be organic. These green, black, oolong, and white teas have to be organic, because when they decaffeinate them, they go through a decaffeination process that is organic. Otherwise, they use other chemicals to decaffeinate the caffeine, the teas. So it's really important that if you're purchasing any tea that has green or black tea, for example, and we use a lot of green and black tea in our blends, they are all decaffeinated organically, so that they're only using water and or carbon dioxide. They're not using chemicals to decaffeinate. If you're buying anything in a tea bag, throw it out. A lot of those teas aren't even the type of teas that they have found. We've looked at different research that has shown that when they ran the DNA of the plants that are in the bags, there's almost no at all what they're claiming is in there. They're flavored to taste like that, but they're selling cheap tea in these bags. The other problem is that the bags are often treated. It may just be bleaching, but it could be other things that protect the integrity of the tea bag so that it lasts in hot water. Never use a tea bag for you or for your birds. Always use stainless steel strainers of some kind that can be washed and reused. But these teas have to be organic so that they're decaffeinated in a safe way. All other teas are herbal, so they're naturally caffeine free. You don't have to worry about that. Now, chamomile is probably one of my favorites because it's calming. And for those of you that have grandmothers from the old country, you all know that chamomile is a big part of the calming the digestive system, helping you sleep, things like that. Chamomile is often, especially with the Mediterranean populations, is just a huge benefit. So glycine acts as a nerve relaxant, and it acts like it's calmative. So it has urinary glycine in it, which is the nerve relaxant that helps calm nervous tissue. It's beneficial for insomnia, so it can help with sleeping, but it also is great for night frights. When we started offering this to cockatiels on a regular basis, we had no night frights anymore, so that was a huge benefit. But it's also great for just pain, stress, hyperactivity, anxiety, any time a bird needs calming. And let's face it, most of our birds could use a little bit of regulation. Now, what's great about chamomile or anything that I talk about here that has calming is that it's not chemical, it's not pharmaceutical. You're not doping up your bird. You are giving it something that's helping reduce the nervous reactions to the environment. And so it's really about balance, which is much safer than offering some kind of pharmaceutical that's going to dope your bird up or force it to calm. It's also a digestive tonic because of how it affects the nervous system. And the digestive system is very tied to the nervous system. And if you're a worrier, like I've been in the past, it can help calm the digestive system through the nervous system. The Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry looked at chamomile and said that even after they concluded their study with chamomile, the benefits lasted 2 weeks. So after offering chamomile consistently for a while, it even after stopping it, it still had benefits beyond. So that's really, really positive. And it has lots of active components. I often share these when I speak at vet schools because some of this rings true with them. But the UCLA Cancer Center has evaluated chamomile, and these are all the compounds that they have found that are beneficial to animal physiology. Calendula is sometimes called the pot marigold, but it's actually a daisy. It's not actually a marigold, which makes it taste a lot better because marigolds can be pretty acrid in their tasting. But this calendula actually helps healing. It helps speed cells, cellular mitosis that helps seal wounds or whatnot. I was turned on to calendula when I had a bird that had gotten a large scratch on its leg from another bird, and Dr. Becker gave me some calendula spray where we sprayed it on the bird. And after a week of spraying twice a day on this wound, you couldn't even see the wound. It was completely gone. And I was like, this is kind of like a miracle. But when I looked into what calendula has component-wise, it started to make a lot of sense. So we spray calendula tea on the birds topically, especially if they're pluckers or mutilators, because it does help calm the tissue. And when you blend this with things like red clover and chamomile and some other things like we do in our pretty plumage perfection tea, all of that together works together to make a really powerful tea that helps calm the mind, calm the tissue, and we've seen birds really come back from plucking. And the reason for that is this is an anti-inflammatory. You can buy over-the-counter gels and creams now that are calendula based at your local grocery or pharmacy, and that's because it has some significant power over inflammation in the skin. The Journal of Clinical Oncology, which is a cancer journal, looked at the dermatitis that women have during breast cancer treatment and found that using calendula in concert with their treatment helped reduce the pain, significantly reduce the pain that they had. And part of it is because of these compounds that are in there that help reduce inflammation in the body. This also can help with like ulcers and things like that in the digestive system that need sealing up, that need healing, because calendula has a lot of benefits. It also has a lot of nutrients because it's a gold flower, so it has beta carotenes in it. So this is another way to get beta carotenes into your bird's body so that they can convert that to vitamin A. Besides carotenoids, the carotenes, it also has a compound called calendulin, which is responsible for the healing, and then some other proteins and fats and things like that that are beneficial. Red clover is another one that helps. It's an anti-inflammatory, but it's really great for respiratory issues. It's a blood tonic as well, so it helps kind of cleanse the blood. It also helps with skin and feather issues, which is why we put it together with chamomile and calendula. In the journal Gynecology Endocrinology, say that 5 times fast, they have found in their research that's been published that the isoflavones in red clover are an attractive alternative to some hormone drugs. The researchers found that when they supplemented with red clover, they found that there was improvements in bone density and tissue integrity. So there's not only benefits to the uptake of the minerals, but also the minerals themselves. So red clover has a lot of benefits. It's like I said, there's a lot of minerals. So calcium, chromium, magnesium, niacin, which is a B vitamin, phosphorus, potassium, thiamine, which is another B vitamin, and vitamin C, all present in red clover. So lots of benefits here. And the birds take to it. They go to it very readily, especially when it's blended with the other things that we have. The center picture here was after weeks, and you can see this bird already has new feather growth. So it really does make a difference. But part of the problem that we see with pluckers is that it's multifactorial. So you can't just treat the mind by giving it a pharmaceutical that's going to calm it down. You have to treat the body and the mind. And so by offering these things, we're reducing inflammation in the tissue. We're reducing, the anxiety in the nervous system. And that combination is what helps, give birds a much better, calmer life. And we offer it to a lot of other animals. This is Spa Day. Spa Day at the Chicago Nature Museum. The Chicago Nature Museum has a large reptile collection. They do bird exhibits now and then as well to do outreach and get people excited about animals. But this is their spa day, and they use our teas to soak their turtles in. And we also have a tea for their tortoises, as well as their aquatic turtles. And they have found that the vitamin A, the beta carotene loads that these animals have is significantly higher than the USDA's population of the same turtles. So that these animals are getting a boost of beta carotene through the water, through their bathing, by drinking it, versus the animals that are not exposed to this. And so now they've turned them onto it, and we're seeing differences in there. So it makes a big difference. Once again, a very simple addition that's fun and enriching, and it increases foraging in a lot of different ways for the animals. Turtles need enrichment too. Herbal tea, like roses and rose hips. So natural source of vitamin C, lots of bioflavonoids. Whenever I see the word bioflavonoid, I think of things with really strong colors. Berries, for example, are rich in bioflavonoids. Rose petals and rose hips, really beneficial. And they're a favorite of a lot of different animals. So rose and rose hips have a lot of benefits to blood, liver conditioning, and kidney support. Use for fatigue, particularly after surgery or some kind of illness. It's great to drink this yourself. Even in the 90s, back in the 90s, Journal of the National Cancer Institute looked at this and found that it reduced the risk of esophageal cancer by nearly 60%, just introducing this into the daily regimen. Purdue University looked at rose tea and found that it inhibits the growth of cancer cells as well. So there's a lot of benefits to these different plant components just by brewing them and drinking them. Peppermint is another one that's very popular. It's great to add to other things because it really enhances the taste and smell. But peppermint's great for GI upset, for gastrointestinal issues. It's antiseptic and it's antiviral, so it's good to just have that as part of the tea mix on a regular basis. The USDA Human Nutrition Research Center at Tufts University looked at peppermint tea, and when they evaluated it, they found that it had antimicrobial benefits. And this is one reason we mix peppermint and things like oregano and other herbs in with our fresh food every morning, because it does keep it fresher longer. It's antiviral. It has antioxidant and anti-tumor and anti-allergenic potential. So there's a lot of benefits. We see this with a lot of birds that have seasonal allergies because of pollen allergies and things like that. And adding peppermint and things like red clover to the mix definitely help reduce those issues. It also relaxes the GI tract because it helps relax nervous tissue. And since they're so tied, it helps to reduce that inflammation and calm that tissue. And these are the active components that have been found in peppermint. And all of these have a lot of different benefits when it comes to reducing inflammation in particular. Star anise I mentioned earlier, and what's really neat about this is the benefit is in the pod. It's not actually in the seed. The seed's great. Seed has benefits, but the brewing is the actual whole pod itself. So it helps with digestion. It helps reduce respiratory issues because shikimic acid is actually the antiviral component of the pod that they use in Tamiflu. It's also good for digestion, stomach issues. Contains compounds that are antifungal and antimicrobial. And then it contains flavonoid glycosides, which are antioxidants and nerve relaxants. So it helps reduce all of that inflammation, helps kind of clean things up, helps reduce the stress on the nervous system because of all of these different components here. It has seed in it, so the seed's going to have lipids and fatty acids, good healthy fats. So you'll see a little bit of an oil slick across the tea because those will be leaching into the water, but also proteins and carbs and minerals and things like that. So lots of benefits there. Raspberry leaf is probably one of the most profound tea elements that I incorporate into the formulations because I have seen it work within hours. It's shocking how quickly it can work. It should not surprise us because women around the world have been drinking raspberry leaf tea for a long time because it helps tone the uterus. It helps with labor, giving birth, things like that. But it's also a hormone balancer. So one of the safest and commonly used herbs to increase fertility, but also balance hormones. So it's not going to make your birds go in any extreme. It's going to help bring them to the center, whether they're male or female. The alkaloid fragrine is what actually plays a role in muscle contractions, and it helps tone things. So not only pushing a baby through the birth canal, but also decreasing constipation, getting things to move through. So it has that effect on all that typical muscle. It also has a lot of vitamins and minerals. It's a leaf and flower, so there's a lot of benefits there, as well as different types of proteins and other things that are going to help keep cells healthy. The reason I had a gorilla picture is I was giving this talk at a large zoo, and the veterinarian came up to me and said, we have this gorilla. She's had labor issues before. Do you think this tea would work? And so I gave her some of our tea. They offered it the next morning, and they texted me this picture and said, well, it worked, because 2 hours after they offered the tea, she gave birth safely, and that's her baby, still connected to the umbilical cord. And they were like, wow, this stuff really works. And I said, well, I mean, it works for people too. So who knew? Red tea, which is rooibos tea, that primarily comes from South Africa. It's grown at high elevations, and it's a mineral-rich tea. Doesn't have the greatest taste, but when you blend it with other stuff, it has a lot of benefits. It's low in tannins, but has a lot of minerals, and those minerals can help with a lot of things, especially when it comes to digestion, muscle spasms, and things like that. It helps relax that tissue. It's rich in flavonoids, like some of the others that help with it's anti-allergenic and anti-inflammatory. And it contains alpha hydroxy acid and antioxidants that are going to help keep cells healthy. It also has anti-mutagenic components. Now that is, once again, where it keeps the DNA from breaking down. Because if the DNA becomes mutated in any way, and our DNA does often become mutated, it's just sometimes in places that don't matter because a lot of our DNA doesn't code for anything. But the DNA, like if it happens in the wrong place, that's when onset of cancer can occur, all kinds of really terrible things. So we want to stave that off by nourishing our bodies with things that can help keep that from occurring. It also has oligosaccharides, which are antiviral. Lavender, awesome flower to use. The smell is enough often to help release insomnia. I often say a handful of lavender at the bottom of your cage, the bird cage, a handful in your pillowcase, a handful in a shipping crate, in your chicken coop. It just helps calm everybody because the aroma from the bioactive compounds in lavender, just the aroma helps calm nervous tissue. But drinking it has even more benefits. So it definitely helps ease insomnia. It helps respiratory issues as well. It helps support kidney health, and it's got a lot of beneficial components, especially these essential oils that are benefits. Now, coumarines are blood thinners. So this is one of those components that I would be very aware of how much I'm adding to each mix, because in small amounts it's fantastic. In large amounts it's a problem. And I've seen people throw tons of lavender into these mixes, and then they wonder, why there's problems. So definitely one of those things where you really need to buy tea blends that are formulated specifically for birds. And like I said, the aroma sometime enough, just for us, is very calming. It's great for, it's also great for motion sickness. They make these little wooden medallions for dogs where you can dip it in lavender oil, and that way they're smelling it while they're driving. If you have a bird that gets sick, you can throw a handful of lavender flowers just in the bottom of their cage, and just the smell is calming enough and will often help with motion sickness. Dandelion leaf and root we use a lot of in our formulas. It's the dried leaf of the dandelion. If you can feed raw, fresh dandelion leaf, I would do this as often as you possibly can. You can get these in bundles at the grocery store. Dandelion leaf, the entire dandelion plant has tons of benefits. And so dandelion leaf is a bitter green, and parrots just seem to love the bitter greens, but there's so many benefits to feeding these fresh. So definitely consider that. They can eat the entire dandelion plant from root to flower. Everything is edible. But this dandelion leaf has a lot of benefits. It's great for liver health, and if your bird has a gallbladder like cockatoos, it benefits that as well. Kidney tonic, so it's really good for increasing the kidney function so that they're more efficient at filtering out those toxins from the blood. It's great for digestion, any kind of connective tissue like joints, cartilage, things like that, reducing inflammation, as well as the circulatory system, so keeping blood vessels healthy. It has a lot of nutrients, a lot of carotenoids, so those will get converted to vitamin A in the body, as well as other types of minerals and things like that. Jasmine flower, sometimes they call these dragon pearls. We use these in our flower forage, which could be offered dry, as well as some other teas, because it contains jasminate, which is an anti-cancer compound. The Journal of Fundamental Clinical Pharmacology in 2005 showed that it is effective against the onset of cancer. So where like the beginning of a tumor, for example. Journal of Applied Physiology found that it also has nervolactants and mood enhancement. So it helps balance the nervous system. It also helps reduce heart disease and stroke because it primes the cardiovascular system. It has antibacterial and antiviral properties, so it's great just to keep your bird thriving and keep their immune system functioning. It also helps reduce body fat. So if you have a bird with fatty liver, it's also a really good one in concert with like green tea and things like that to offer. Coriander is a seed that we brew. It kind of floats on the top while we're brewing it. Some birds will eat the seeds as well. But it's great for digestion. It's an appetite stimulant. So if you have a picky bird, sometimes this is what it needs to get over that hump and try some new things. It's antioxidant and anti-inflammatory because it has these volatile oils in the seed that have a host of different benefits. And it has fatty oils like some of these essential fatty acids at the bottom as well. So there's a lot of benefits to brewing this as well. Fennel is another seed we brew. It's a digestive aid. It has a lot of beneficial fatty acids as well. It has a lot of other components that are beneficial, but it has nutrition, proteins, some beneficial carbohydrates in the form of sugars, vitamins and minerals, things like that. And mannitol is actually what gives fennel its smell, and that has been found to reduce inflammation as well as reduce the onset of cancer. Milk thistle is commonly prescribed by vets. We brew the seed itself because that is what has the silymarin compound in it. The seed is brewed, and it helps protect and even regenerate liver tissue to some extent. In my opinion, every bird should be on a milk thistle routine, whether it be tea or just part of the diet in some way, because milk thistle has a lot of benefits to protecting the liver, and it's much easier with liver to be proactive than it is reactive. And so protecting the liver at all costs is really important. It also helps with other filtering organs like kidney and bladder. But silymarin is the flavonoid that's in the seed that actually helps protect the liver. They extract the silymarin to produce products that are in pharmaceuticals, but you can offer this yourself to give your birds that beneficial liver protection. Tulsi leaves are another really popular tea around the world. They call it holy basil. It's actually not basil like we think of it, but there's two major reasons why Tulsi, like every animal should be on Tulsi. First, it's an adaptogen. Adaptogenic compounds reduce stress of changes in the environment. And we all, I'm sure we've all had birds who really react strongly to certain types of change, whether it's a new toy or, you know, but it's the stressors in the environment that we don't realize are stressing our birds because they hide it and don't react all the time. It could be that you put a new clock in your living room and they can hear the hands move, because I actually had somebody that figured that out about their bird. Those types of things, you don't know what kind of changes are occurring in the environment that are going to stress them out. So offering them an adaptogenic that daily support will help reduce how they react to those changes in the environment. It's also an immunomodulator. So an overactive immune system is just as dangerous as an underactive immune system. So it's really important that the immune system is balanced. And so having an immunomodulator like Tulsi tea can be really beneficial to keep the immune system healthy and active without being overactive, but also helps them recover from things quicker. It's also great for digestion and metabolism, which is why people often drink this when they're trying to lose weight. So another benefit to helping increase that fat expenditure instead of them storing the fat around their organs, which ends up becoming deadly. So Tulsi's been well studied. In this journal here, they found that the anti-stress action that Tulsi exhibits is because of the antioxidants in this herb. And so those have been found to be really beneficial on nervous tissue all over the body. And these are some of the components. So there's some really great oils, including carvacrol. Carvacrol you will also find in things like oregano. And carvacrol is a compound that is actually antifungal, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. So one of the reasons when we're hand feeding chicks, parrot chicks, we use a green powder that I formulate for birds, and we mix that with the hand feeding formula. And it contains things like oregano and thyme and things like that. And all of those herbs have benefits because they stave off yeast infections, for example, which can be very common in crops and things like that. We see no incidence of any kind of bacterial or yeast fungal infections whatsoever in chicks when we add this to the formula. And so carvacrol has a lot of benefits. And like I said, you can find that in Tulsi, oregano, and some other of the greens. Turmeric and black pepper are something we use. Now we use the whole root. So we know the source of our turmeric. We know where it comes from. We know that it's pure because we can actually see the root itself. And we mix this with black pepper because the piperine in black pepper is a compound that actually helps cells absorb the turmeric. Otherwise, the turmeric kind of goes in the body and then leaves. It doesn't really have a benefit. It's not very digestible. It's not very bioavailable. But when we add black pepper to it, that piperine in the black pepper then helps absorb, increases the absorption of the turmeric, so you can actually benefit from it. So if you're taking turmeric in any form, if you're not taking some kind of black pepper, you're not getting the benefit from it like you should. But turmeric and black pepper in concert, when you feed them together, help reduce anxiety and stress. It's huge anti-inflammatory. It's great for the nervous system, great for skin tone, healthy skin and feathers. It helps support the cardiovascular system, like the heart. and it helps with the immune system. And then ashwagandha is also a root we use. This has been used for centuries for a lot of different reasons, but it's a powerful anti-inflammatory. It's great for stress and anxiety because it helps support nervous system balance, not forcing the nervous system to go one way or the other, but to balance it. Also great for skin conditioning and feather conditioning, fur conditioning for your dogs. And it also helps regulate blood sugar and cholesterol absorption. And it's great for the immune system. So it has a lot of benefits. Once again, this is another one where too much of a good thing can be problematic. So you really need to know who's formulating and that they're keeping these things in mind. You don't just throw this into a bag because you heard it's a good thing, which is what a lot of other people are doing. And it just kills me that I'm watching this happen and I can't do anything about it. So how do we produce tea? Cold brewing is the easiest. Cold brewing is where you take a pitcher of filtered water, you throw a handful of tea in it, you cap it off, and you leave it on your counter overnight. You can also put it in the fridge if you'd like, but cold brewing means that you're not introducing heat. So that's my favorite. Cold brewing is great. It just takes longer, but you can make large quantities at one time and keep it in the refrigerator. If you're going to brew hot tea, you always use hot water, but you never use boiling water. Boiling water will destroy the nutrients in tea. So it's important to use hot, but not boiling. Tea should be used, it should only be offered when it's cooled. Don't ever offer hot tea to your birds. That's probably a common sense thing, but I'm saying it anyway. And like I said, don't use tea bags. Don't use tea bags or anything like that. Only use stainless steel infusers so that you can clean them and reuse them. If your animal is suspicious, you can steep tea for a shorter period of time. A lot of the time, your birds will do the one-eyed thing and go, "What are you putting in my bowl?" If they're suspicious, just make it thinner and then increase it over time. What I've done with when I introduce our flocked birds in the aviary to tea is I'll throw tea leaves in fresh, clean water and put it out there right away. And then over the course of the day, the tea will steep and they'll kind of get accustomed to the darkening of the water and drink it without just a shock to their system and be like, here's tea. So sometimes you just need to make it more dilute and then just increase the benefit. Some birds just take to teas right away. Sometimes it takes some experimentation to see which tea blends they like better. But the use of tea over the course of time has just been like overwhelmingly positive. We never hear any problems. It's always really beneficial and helpful. You can substitute tea for water part of the day. Now, the reason I say part of the day is I often offer tea first thing in the morning with their fresh food. And then when I pull their fresh food after work, I will then pull their tea and give them fresh water with their dry food the rest of the evening. So they can have tea for part of the day. Now, there are zoos who have a tea regimen where their birds get only tea for a month, and then they get no tea for a month and back and forth. I really like giving them tea for part of the day so that they have that daily benefit, but then they also have access to fresh water for part of the day as well. I think that's a happy medium that seems to work for most people. Some teas you can spray, but if you put it into a spray bottle, you need to put it in the refrigerator because you want to avoid spoilage because tea is a food. So, and you don't want to spray any type of tea. I would recommend not spraying like rose and rose hip tea on your birds because it'll turn them pink. So, things like our plumage perfection tea, you can totally spray on the birds. It's great for their skin. It's great for feathers. They'll drink it while they're preening themselves, but you do have to refrigerate it because it is an active food. Like I said, never replace water with tea in a day. They always have some fresh water later in the day with their dry food. And many herbal teas can be fed dry, but you don't get the benefit as you do when you brew it. Brewing releases things that are not always available when they're fed dry. But we do add these dry teas and foraging mixes to their sprouts, and their greens and that type of thing. Every morning they have some mix of these with their moist, fresh foods. So you can totally, do it both ways. And this is what it looks like when we add these things. These are calendula flowers, rose petals, blue cornflowers, red clover flower. There's some chamomile in here. Yeah, and this is all soaked and sprouted. We cook nothing for our birds. We don't recommend cooking anything for your birds because cooked food spoils much, much faster, and cooking denatures a lot of nutrients. So we don't recommend cooking anything for birds. I'm currently writing up a post about the danger of cooking rice and pasta for birds, and the reason that can make them so sick so quick. But this fresh food can last all day without any problems whatsoever. It does not spoil like cooked food does. So if you haven't started soaking and sprouting, you definitely need to consider that. It's super easy, super cheap, and huge benefits to your birds. I always have to thank Dr. Becker for turning us onto this research so long ago. And she's just been a wonderful colleague altogether. So I really want to thank her for that. If you're not part of our Avian Raw Whole Food Nutrition group, if you search Avian Raw on Facebook, this will come up and you can join by answering just a few questions. Our group is extremely focused. It's all about nutrition. There's no drama, no one's fighting, and you can search our countless posts for any question and to get answers about feeding different types of whole food. And we now have our company that we just started a year ago, actually a year ago last week. I've been talking about this stuff for so long that it just was time to start formulating our own teas. So I'm really glad that it's taken off and gotten to people the way it has. We've been really lucky. So we really appreciate the support. And I can take questions.
Okay, I have a question that just popped up from Jennifer. She said, when you serve cold brew tea, you leave the leaves in so it's chunky?
So you can. Some birds like that. Some birds like to forage and pull stuff out of their water. Some birds do not want anything put in their water. I can think of some eclectus that way because they like to make soup themselves. They like to bring all their food to the water. But the reason a lot of birds bring food to the water is because they're used to, like, they've evolved to eat moisture-rich food. So they're bringing it to the water for some reason. There's a reason for behavior, like Laura Joseph always says, right? So when we're looking at that, you can definitely leave that stuff in, or you can strain it. And then I take what I strained and mix it in with my sprouts. So there's no waste. So that way they're getting that added benefit of increased biodiversity in the bowl of food now because you've added more things that you just brewed. So there's still some benefit to that. You are welcome.
All right. Let's see. Are there any other questions? This was I took lots of notes. In fact, I think I have to wean myself off the coffee and go toward green tea because it's
every
just
day. I drink tons of green tea just every day.
it's definitely wonderful. Let's see. Let me, Bonnie said, I wasn't there last week, but listened to your phenomenal lecture. When doing food or tea, she's got a cocktail. How do you do good raw food prep without throwing away a lot of food?
Yeah, so if the best way for single birds is to get the Easy Sprouter. And if you're not familiar with Easy Sprouter, I tout it all the time. I sell it now because I'm like, this is Nobel Prize worthy. I don't like the design is perfect. So what you do with a single bird, I get 2 Easy Sprouters. And each day I throw just enough for the bird to eat one day. So like a tablespoon of sprouts, let's just say. I put it in the Easy Sprouter and I soak it. I leave it for 8 to 12 hours, and then I rinse it off and let it sprout for another 12 hours. And then it's ready. So that's ready the next day, 24 hours later. Then I'm starting the next one so that every day I'm staggering it. And all I'm doing is adding a spoonful of sprouts, rinsing and soaking them. Later in the day, rinse them and leave them overnight. And then you've got fresh food for your bird in the morning. So you don't have to make a ton of food. You don't have to waste a ton of food. You're just alternating every day. You're just adding a little cup. It takes seconds. It takes seconds. That's it. It's so easy. So having two sprouters that you alternate is much easier. And then when you buy fresh food, just research how to keep food like produce fresh in the refrigerator. You may have seen recently people keeping strawberries, for example, in mason jars in their fridge, and the strawberries just last forever. And it's like, well, how is that possible? Well, look up what is the best way to store some of these things. Because if you buy once a week, let's say you buy a bundle of dandelion greens from your local grocery store, your bird's only going to pick at one leaf, right? One leaf is this big, and your bird is this big, so like one leaf is plenty. But grab a few different types of greens. Microgreens are really beneficial too because they can last in the fridge for up to a week as well. So once a week, just having some of that available, and just research, how do you keep this fresh? There's tons of ideas on Google on how to keep all this stuff fresh. And that way you're not wasting a ton of food, but your bird's still getting as much diversity in their bowl as possible. And you can grow microgreens too. They sell kits that you can just literally, you add water and you put them on your counter, your windowsill, and they grow within a week. You have microgreens you can just snip with scissors and throw in your bird's bowl. It's so easy. So definitely there's a lot of, and go to the group because there's lots of information on the group too about how to do it, and not waste a lot of food.
Ah, well, how about the chia pet? You had
Yeah. Chia
talked
pets are
about
fine.
the
Yeah. Because chia pets are basically microgreen growers, and so all your chia is really difficult to sprout because it's a mucilaginous seed, and like you could spackle the bottom of the space shuttle with this stuff and it'll survive. Like it's so strong that I've had chia seeds in a sprouter and my glass sprouter exploded because the chia seeds secrete this mucus and it's really hard to use. But the reason chia pets work so well is you're just using plain clay and you're just taking the wet chia seeds and you're using that mucus that they produce to coat, and it adheres, it sticks to the clay. And so you're just growing chia seeds, and chia is one of the best seeds you could be offering sprouted anyway. So yeah, you could totally do that. I know people that grow chia in just clay pots, and then when they're done clipping all the chia seeds from the clay dishes that you put under clay pots, and they're just as soon as you're done, they'll soak them in hot water and scrub them, and then you reuse them and just start a new batch of chia. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to chia sprouts. Yeah.
That's a great idea. I'll have to work on that one. Yeah, and easy. Yeah,
Well, and
we
it's
like.
fun. You can literally offer that clay tray to your birds and just let them pick the microgreens themselves. Wheatgrass is another one. We sell wheatgrass kits here now because they're so fun, especially for cockatiels, budgies, birds that do grazing, because wheatgrass grows so fast. It's so nutritious and it's so similar to things that they would eat in the wild. Like they just kind of recognize it as food. So wheatgrass kits are also really, really beneficial.
That's an excellent idea. I love that. Let's see. So in brewing, like the teas in the pitcher, just a handful is.
Yeah, generally a handful. What we normally recommend is 1 to 2 teaspoons of tea per 8 to 10 ounces of water. So if you add all that up, you can't overdo it, right? So it's not going to be like a huge problem, but generally we stay between a teaspoon to teaspoon and a half per 8 to 10 ounces of water. That seems to be a really good balance with all of the different components that we're using in our avian teas.
Yeah, and they do love it. I brew it for my trio downstairs, and they love this tea. They do take very readily to it. As Jason said, I put give them it in the morning, and then swap it out in the afternoon, and
Yep.
it's easy, yeah, and they love it.
Yep. And if they don't take to it, I mean, we've got stubborn birds. Like that's just part of owning a bird. You got to give them a long time and be persistent. I said this last week, I'll say it again. It's not fair to the bird to just give it a few times and say, well, they don't like it, and then walk away. Like, we got to give our birds sometimes months of exposure to certain things. And sometimes it's a matter of giving them, like, I had an eclectus who would not drink tea out of a cup, like out of his cup. It had to be in a mug. So I just got him a wide bottom mug that he couldn't tip over. And then all of a sudden he was drinking it because presumably he saw me drinking it out of a mug. So sometimes you just need to outsmart your birds, and you are smarter than your birds. So you can do this. It just sometimes takes a long time, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Brew up some tea, read them a story. They like to be read to. Have tea time with your bird.
Yeah.
Perfect. Are there any other questions? I mean, this has been phenomenal. I mean, it's like, yeah, this lecture was so good for the birds and for us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. We use in our blends, we only use human grade, organic whenever it's available as organic.
mhm.
So we maximize that. But um, when it comes to like, I'm so picky. I have learned over the past 15 years of formulating teas for birds, like what the sources are, where to go for the sources, which ones are better than others. We've really done a lot of work to make sure that it's every bag gets the very, very best. No cutting corners. There's no cutting corners. If you find it cheaper somewhere, it's probably because the ingredients are cheaper. That's just the way it is. You get what you pay for, especially when it comes to tea. So it's really helpful. I mean, we get from um, um, elephant safe tea sources because they will take habitat away from elephants in Asia to grow tea fields and things like that. So we look for those sustainably grown type teas and make sure that we're incorporating those whenever possible as well. So
Wonderful.
if you go to sorry, Samantha, if that's a great question. If you go to the website here, we have a directions link on the front page that talks about brewing and things like that. And then some of the benefits of the different types. So the information should be there, or my website, drcrean.com.
Yes, it's yeah, your website is both of them full of such good information. I mean, it's just wonderful. And I get my teas from biodiversity bird blends too for my flock, and they are exceptional. I mean, they're beautiful. I mean, I just opened up my green forage, and it was like the
Yeah.
smell is just
You smell
amazing.
the quality in those ingredients, and it comes down to what we use. And every sale is supporting the animal nutrition lab at the university, so we cannot thank you enough. Because if you don't know, research on bird nutrition, there is no funding for it. The pet food companies fund their own research, which is questionable.
Yes, very true.
So
Yes.
yeah, and dog food companies and cat food, they all do it because they're every pet food company in the country is self-regulated. So you need to, yeah, there's a lot of bias.
Well,
So
that's
I want people to literally see the ingredients. I want them to see it's right there. I can see everything that's in here. You can't do that with processed food. So it's really, really important that they can see everything that their bird is accessing.
that's so true. Yeah, because I mean, we have wild animals living domestically in our homes.
Yeah.
So we have to, yeah, accommodate them. And yes, Ra
And
has always been the best.
the reason that parrots are can be such great pets is because they're so adaptable. Like they can adapt really well, but we need to be aware of their wild nature so that we can help them adapt. And sometimes tea is the answer because it helps calm their nervous system and relax them and be less reactive to all the different stressors that we just take as regular daily routine. But parrots can live a fantastic long life in our homes if we give them the support they need and understand them as birds. Treat them as birds. Don't treat them as people. You're doing them a disservice if you do.
Very, very true. Yes, we'll just snuggle up under the blanket and be good, right?
Yeah. What people are always surprised by what turns birds on. And I'm like, don't let them crawl into anything. Birds don't crawl into things unless they're actually nesting. Like don't encourage that because then you're gonna have hormonal birds. There's a lot of things that we think because we like as humans are appropriate for birds, but we got to treat birds as birds. That doesn't mean you're treating them less. You're just treating them differently, and that's important.
Absolutely. Oh, Jason, this has been so wonderful. Yes, definitely go to BioBird Blends. Check out his website. There's so many wonderful good things for your birds there. And if you're signed up for our food workshop, he's you got to be with us to add on the commentary there, see how we do things at CPR. Granted, we're packaging doing it for the whole flock, but
Yep.
I value your opinion. So if you can help us do better on some things, I mean, your input is always welcomed.
I have a friend that lives near you now, so I need to get out there. So maybe we should talk about an in-person thing at some point this year.
That would be fantastic.
Yep. So
Fantastic.
we'll talk.
Alrighty then. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, we'll let you go. And I appreciate your time, Jason.
Thank
And
you. Thank you, everybody.